Welcome to the All Things Real Estate Podcast with our very own Josh Barker. With more than 20 years of experience and over 5,000 properties sold, Josh brings a unique perspective to the real estate market. Let's get started.
All right, so I'm here with my great friend and real estate broker extraordinaire, Michael Medley. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Josh.
How's it going, bud?
Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. We're kind of shaking up the podcast this month, a little different than what we normally do, mainly because of your experience. I mean, you've been doing real estate for how many years now?
About 30.
About 30 years. And interesting for our listeners and viewers out there, Michael Medley is the person responsible for getting me into real estate.
So I'm sorry.
Apologize, exactly. So it was, what year was it that you and I started working at? 1990, what was it?
1999.
1999.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it was really the thing that I remember most about when I first got to meet you is that you were running a company where it was pretty forward thinking. You had, you know, administrative team, you had sales team, and you kind of really understood that you needed to be really proactive with your approach to real estate. So, which was pretty refreshing at the time because it wasn't like that at a lot of the offices.
It was very unusual.
Yeah.
But I had, you know, coming from my parents, my
Yep.
father,
Yep.
We had an idea of where it was going.
Yep. So what Mike's referring to is Medley Realty had been here since I think the 70s, right?
1972.
1972. And then
You are
ended up
correct.
taking the office over in the 90s.
94, 95.
So you've been doing this like since you were born, pretty much.
Don't remind me.
It's been a while, so.
Mm-hmm.
But nice shirt, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I like that. Is that salmon?
It's good salmon color, yeah.
He's got some salmon going.
Got that going for me.
Good for you. So for everybody else, let's dive right into some things. This podcast, I think what I wanted to do is just to kind of really lean into your knowledge of the market. You've been around a long time. You've seen markets that have gone up and down and sideways and everything in between. And that kind of experience, I think, would be valuable to a lot of our listeners and viewers because if you haven't lived it, it's kind of hard to really describe it, you know. So what year again did you jump into real estate here in Reading?
92.
92.
Mm-hmm.
Will you mind just describe for our listeners what was the feeling of the real estate market in the early 90s?
Early 90s, we were going through a transition. If you guys remember that we had the Gulf War in
Yep.
91,
Yep.
the markets and there were bank issues that were going on right before 1989, 1991.
Well, there were savings and loan issues that
Yep.
were happening out, right?
And so there was a transition that was going on.
Yep.
There was an adjustment around 92, 93 of price of around 20% down. There was still a lot of new construction that was going on at the same time.
Yep.
Property on Shasta View, for example, was selling for about 119,000, 1,700 square feet.
So for people listening to this, you know, so early 90s, off of Shasta View, because there used to be a dead end on Shasta View. Like people don't know, but you know where that big circle is on the way to McConnell Foundation. That wasn't there. There was a dead end right after Ravenwood Subdivision. You couldn't even drive past it. And what was the name of the builder in there again?
Donlin.
Donlin, right? And so those homes, early 90s, were being built by Don. And what were they selling for?
Anywhere from 119 to 136.
119, 136. And that was early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
What did it look like by I mean, you've described to me before, and I'll let you share it, but you were saying there wasn't any major swings in the 90s. What did it feel like?
Well, we probably had adjustments depending on the interest rates.
Yeah.
Probably 5% up or 5% down.
On value?
On value for the next 8 years.
So you're saying that pricing at that time was closely tied to what the interest rates were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And supply.
And supply.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was the market? I mean, was there home selling at high volume, or what was the volume like?
I think it was probably very much an average volume. There wasn't enough push to actually create appreciation and dwindle the supply.
Okay.
So we had a consistent market. It may not have been something that you could see consistent appreciation.
Yeah. But it was just normal, a normal market. It kind of went up and down a little bit based on the time of the year, what the demand was versus the supply, and what interest rates were doing.
Yep.
Okay, got it. So when did that all kind of start to change?
Probably around 2001,
Okay.
We started to see a movement in price point.
Yep.
We saw an adjustment maybe about 15 to 20% more sales that were taking place. And it started to synergy, where we started to see the loosening of the lending institutions. We started to see flex pays, interest onlys, things of that nature, negative AM loans. That was really in 2003, 2004 that we started seeing that. But that created our first really big boom that we saw in 12 years.
Right. So I remember that part, just coming in 99, not knowing anything, in 2000, not knowing anything anymore, really. You like pouring into me, sharing with me everything you could. And I don't think I recognized what the market was at that time. It just kind of felt like the market. I remember selling houses up in Country Heights for 145 to 150,000. $100 a foot was kind of like the standard price per square foot at that point when I came in the market. Interest rates were probably 9% on an FHA loan. Does that sound about right?
I say 8 or 9%.
Yeah, it was right in there. I think I remember some friends of ours, I still am friends with them today, that I think I remember they got a rate at like 9% on an FHA for a $110,000 home in 2000, like early 2000, maybe like 2000 in January, February or something.
It seemed to me that there was some adjustments going down to about 6 to 6.5 at that point, but
yeah, I'd have to look and see.
Yeah,
I don't remember for sure. But the what I do remember though is that it was kind of like a kind of a slow, steady growth going into 2003. Kind of felt like things were moving up, but they weren't moving up too fast. But then, like you said, something happened. Like the mortgage brokers and lenders, they started changing loan programs. They started loosening the availability of financing, right? And that's when we really saw an increase in buyer demand. That's when we saw a lot of the investors coming in, right? Do you remember when the investors really started flooding in the market?
I would starting probably late 2003, 04, 05, and probably at the end about 06.
Yep. And I remember seeing that too. It was like probably around 2003-ish, I think is when I started really realizing, wow, there's people that are like, they're buying into these subdivisions, new home subdivisions. They're buying in the first phase when the prices first were set for those. And then by the time they got to second phase, they're already up $50,000, and those folks that bought those were like selling them then, right, in the second phase. They were selling the first phase homes.
There was supposedly about 40% of the purchases that were going on at the time were speculation.
Yeah,
investors.
Yeah. So, and what Mike's leaning to there was that, that 2003 and 4 and 5, we started to see an increase in investor participation, and the numbers that we remember at the time, it felt like it was probably about 40% of the investment was or the purchases were investors or non-owner occupied or speculation.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was, definitely, and builders were all online at that time too, right? They were all trying to supply the market.
We had 3 or 4 major builders for our area that were going gung ho.
Yep.
But there was also, you had the change in capital gains laws that was in early 2000 that took place, where you had a one-time exemption before.
Yep.
What was 125,000 over 55 that you could write off.
Yep.
When they changed the guidelines to 250 for a single or 500 for a couple, it sort of set off this motion that basically carried us till today.
Yep. So in the late 90s, the federal government came out with a capital gains exemption. If you were single, up to $250,000 of the profit would not be taxed if you've lived in the home for 2 years or more within the previous 5. And now all of a sudden they were using this as a wealth building tool, and people were buying and flipping and doing all the stuff they could do to gain wealth by doing that.
Every 2 years.
Yep, exactly. So I remember seeing that too. Let's talk for a minute about what the loans started doing. By 2003 and 4, we also started to notice some advertising. Remember that? There was some advertising from lenders about different types of loan programs. What did you start seeing at that point?
It was confusing. I was more of a traditional kind of agent where these types of loans really didn't make a lot of sense because the expectation was you had to have a certain amount of appreciation.
Yep.
In Reading, we had usually, from 1972 to today was probably about 7%, 6.5% over the life of that.
Yep.
But these types of loans, because they were using reverse amortization, flex pays, interest only,
yep.
You had 100% non-owner occupied financing. You had stated income 100%, which are all, they're not Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae guidelines, let's put it that way.
Yeah, not anymore for sure.
Yeah.
Not since the Dodd-Frank bill. So a lot of these had what we call balloon payments, right? And so what Mike's kind of talking about is that, 03, 04, we started to see lenders loosening the lending guidelines. We started to see buyers actually responding to that and wanting to use interest only or negative amortization loans to purchase. And the big reason why is because for the same monthly payment, they could get a bigger house. I remember having conversations with people and saying, here's the 30-year mortgage. You're going to buy a home in, let's say, Quail Ridge, right? And that would be a neighborhood that would reflect the value of, let's say, at the time, maybe $200,000, right? For a bigger home in there. Then, if they were to use interest only or negative amortization, instead of buying a $200,000 home, same monthly payment, they're going to buy a home for $300,000 instead. And that put them over in, securely, it put them over in like Country Heights subdivision with average selling prices of $300,000.
Or even Silver Creek or something.
Or even
of that
Silver Creek or Copper Creek
Yep.
or something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
So, but the point is that 30-year fixed homes, mortgages, they could buy a home for $200,000. But if they were willing to go to an interest only or a neg am loan, they could buy a house at $300,000. But that was a fixed payment for only a short period of time. And there was going to be a sunset to that or a balloon payment at some point. And do you think that had an impact on value?
Oh, absolutely.
What did it do?
Well, you had people who would normally not be able to afford a certain price structure.
Yeah.
It pushed that up exponentially. And a lot of those people were using on these flex pays.
Yep.
And the flex pays, you could say, okay, I'm got a house in Silver Creek.
Yep.
It's Ocho and Sheehan. It's 2,400 square feet. I can make a $1,000 a month payment, or I can do interest only at $2,200 a month.
They could just choose?
Yep. Sort of either or you can go principal and interest. So their normal payment would have been about 24 to 26.
All right, so help me understand this. So they're buying a really nice home in Silver Creek, and for $400,000. If they had the option of making the regular principal and interest payment, or they could make an interest only payment, or they could make a negative amortization where they they're just tacking that onto the back of the loan.
Yes, they are. And so each month there was an increase in principal.
Every month that house had a larger debt on it.
And so the only way that made sense is that we saw a certain amount of appreciation in the market. So if we had 7 or 8 or 9% appreciation,
then they could still sell the house.
Sell the house and get out.
But if it doesn't go up,
that's the problem.
That's the problem. So let's look at like 2005, 2006. I think that most people, if you look backwards now, I think the technical month was like the fourth quarter of 2006 is when they started to see the thing start to really, really peak out. Would you agree with that?
I would say that. You could see that it was more coasting probably that last quarter.
Okay. What happened? I mean, what it ultimately happened that caused the market to shift, in your opinion?
Well, you can only push up for a certain point, and then if there's not that normal appreciation, these people who were buying with no money or limited money down, so there was no investment into it. And so it was very easy for them just to step away if this investor, if 40% are investments, if they have zero money in the game, well, then they just walk away from it.
Yep.
And so that started a cascade.
It started happening.
Yeah.
So I've heard people say that too, that essentially value got pushed up as high as it could go on the flex pays, on the interest only and neg am, like the values went as high as they could go and started running up against affordability. But this time it's running against affordability on bad loans, not on regular 30-year fixed loans.
Absolutely.
And that's where things started to slow down, right? So let's speak to a minute for our listeners about what did the inventory look like? Did we have more homes available than there was buyers to purchase them?
Yes.
A lot more?
Yes.
Were we oversupplied, do you believe, as a community, but also as a country in terms of how many houses we had available?
Yes.
Versus how many could
definitely.
actually buy them? Is that different than today?
Absolutely, 100%. I believe we were sitting around with 1,800, 1,900 homes on the market at one point.
Yeah.
And we had, let's say, 200 transactions at that point.
Yep. Mike's talking about something. We as a company reviewed this earlier this week, and we were looking at 2006, and then we looked again, I think, at 2008 or something, or 2007. And there was a huge jump where we had like maybe 500 or 600 homes for sale, and a large sales volume of 300, 350 homes a month or whatever it was. But a year and a half later, it was at 1,700 homes for sale, and sales volume's down to about 200. Does that sound right to you?
Yep.
Okay.
That's what I remember.
The big change that happened was that when the investors pulled out, right? I mean, when the investors stopped buying, which was 40% of the transactions or purchases were investors. So if the market's no longer going up, I would imagine the investors all stopped purchasing.
Absolutely.
So overnight, 40% of transactions went away.
Yep.
And then when they went away, then the inventory spikes because there's nobody buying those homes anymore.
And there are programs, there's subdivisions that were coming online at that point.
Oh, that's a great point. So we had builders that were still aggressively bringing up housing units, and the market was beginning to shift.
I love contractors because they're always the optimists.
Yeah, they're optimists. You gotta love them. Without them, we wouldn't have homes. So thank you. With that, they're kind of stuck. They have to finish a house that they think probably won't likely sell for what they're going to have into it because of the market changing. And some of them might have been at a point where they maybe stopped, which is why we saw some subdivisions where there was just slabs. Remember that?
Absolutely.
I mean, slabs in the neighborhood, no sticks, no framing, nothing. They just stopped right there at the slab.
It's just the cost. There was no way to sell and make a profit at that point.
Yep.
And a lot of those subdivisions turned over.
Yes. Yep. So let's talk about that then. So investors pull out, which we think was about 40% of purchases at that point. Interest-only and neg-am loans became the thing of the past because lenders took those loans off the table right away.
Frank Dodd.
Right. Yeah, the Dodd-Frank bill. So now it's tightened the money supply, right? And you got fewer buyer participation. It sounds like a recipe for a market correction like you wouldn't believe. That's what it did.
It was something that I think a lot of people didn't expect.
Yeah.
And then the bonds on the secondary market, not knowing how it affect the world, it created an even deeper hole.
That's right. Yeah, because people were, lenders would fund the loan, and then they'd go sell that note to a school teacher union in Zimbabwe or something. Yeah, and so we had this stuff going everywhere.
It affected every country, even small little school districts.
Oh, yeah. Well, I started hearing the word derivative, and I'm like, derivative? What's a derivative? I mean, now I'm sitting there trying to research all this stuff back then, trying to figure out what's going on. And one thing was for sure, the housing market was grossly oversupplied relative to demand. Prices were pushed up to an astronomical number based on really bad loan practices, and now those loan options were being removed from the market. And it sounds like it was just a recipe for a market correction like we have never seen in terms of value. I mean, it was called the Great Recession for a reason, and real estate was really the shot across the bow, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So let's fast forward then. Now we're sitting around 2010, 11, 12. We're beginning to eat up a lot of that distressed property. What did that look like back then?
It was still a lot of inventory.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of short sales, a lot of foreclosures. A lot of those loans that were becoming due from 2003, 2004.
Yep.
And these people weren't able to refinance because the home had depreciated to a level where they were upside down.
Yeah.
And so at that point, we had to start that focus on short sales and, a lot of foreclosures. So.
Yeah. And what year do you think that we started to really see the return of? Because I think it was people were buying the whole time. One of the things that we did in our report we did a few days ago, we were still having like 180 homes selling per month, even through 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010.
Always people that need to buy and sell.
Yeah, there was always people who need to buy and sell. And so we saw transactions still happening. So this thought that, it's all going away tomorrow obviously didn't really look like the case when you look backwards at what was happening before. When do you think the investor returned?
I think the smart guys were coming in around 2010, 2011, but we really started to feel it in 2012.
Yeah. So 10, 11, some of the savviest investors had felt like, okay.
Yeah, it hit the bottom.
It's a good time to get in. Yeah. And then by 12, maybe some people are beginning to realize that this is a good time to get in. By 13, everybody knows it's a good time to get in.
Yep.
Yeah, and people started buying. Hey, Marcus, real quick, how much time do we have? Are we good on time?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. How much do you have right now left, do you think?
We got 10 minutes.
I just want to make sure we budget out for everybody.
Yep. 10 minutes.
So 10 minutes. Thank you. So okay, we got 2010, 11. Some of the savviest investors are coming back into the market. They're beginning to strip away some of the inventory because at that point, how many homes do you think we had on the market about that point?
What about 2015? Probably around 1900. Yeah.
About 1900 or so by 2010, 11, somewhere in there. And a lot of it was vacant. A lot of it was either foreclosed or short sales. Not all of it, but that was a lot of the inventory.
And I think by 2015 we were at 1500.
Yeah, so it started to trend down.
Yeah.
But savvy investors come back 10, 11. They start stripping away at the inventory. 13 or 12, 13, people really start to get the word market's probably bottomed out. We started to see our average sales price start to creep up a little bit by 14. And it was just, it was just
a slow 3 or 4% appreciation until 2018.
Yeah. So we started to see in 2012, 13, we started to see that inventory going up. So, or I'm sorry, the inventory is starting to go down and the valuation of homes starting to go up. Some investor participation at a much larger level than it is today. I mean, right now we're probably sitting on how much investors you think?
Probably 10%.
Yeah,
I think that's the number that people
and maybe not recent in the last couple of months, but I would say over the last year. Last year, yeah. But back then, probably in 10, 11, 12, 13, what do you think the participation of investors was then?
I think it was probably 30%.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, people were going after value.
And these are not the investors that were looking for a quick appreciation. They were more long-term investors. They were buying these under Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae guideline loans.
Yep.
They were needing 20 to 25% down. It was just a completely different beast than what we saw in 03, 04, 05.
Yeah, with 304, 05, I mean, you could borrow money out of your own house at 5 or 10% down and go buy an investment property or something, right?
And you could do a stated income. You could do zero money down on a non-owner occupied.
Gosh, that's crazy.
Crazy talk.
No wonder it got like it did. So now you look at 2015-ish, 16. We're still going up. What happened? Somewhere around 17, 18, I think the market began to plateau a little bit.
It felt like we were going through our transition, which would be our normal cycle.
A normal cycle.
Yeah, what we normally see since 72, since we've tracked, is you have that 6 to 7, 8 year transition where you cascade up, move up, and then there's an adjustment.
Yep. So when people talk about real estate cycles, they're normally referring to 7, 8 year cycles.
At least in our area. Yeah.
We were cycling up since like 2010, 11. And so by 2018, we started to feel like, hey, things look like they're plateauing a little bit. And I can remember that. I remember having conversations with people and being like, yeah, I can feel something. But what happened that changed that?
Well, we had our bad luck became good luck, so to speak. We had the car fire that took place. We had the Paradise fire that took place. Where at the car fire, we lost about 1,200 homes. The Paradise, what was it?
28,000.
28,000.
Housing units,
Yeah. And all of those people had to find a place to live.
Yeah.
And so at that point, we weren't building houses at any high level. I think when we were doing that, it was probably 80 homes, 100 permits were being pulled a year.
Yeah, it was low. I remember running reports for that. For the city of Reading, so for our listeners, the new construction in the city of Reading was probably less than 100 housing units per year. For many, many years from like 2010, it was probably less than 50. I don't even know. But by like 14, 15, 16, up through like 2018, before the car fire, it was probably 100 or less a year. It was not significant by any means.
No, it wasn't. We were definitely in a resale market.
Yeah, we were in a resale market. You're right. And so fire hits, 1,000, 1,200 homes here locally, 28,000 in Paradise. Collectively, we've got a big issue. We've got a huge amount of demand coming out of nowhere. But we had a lot of inventory. So what happened? I mean, what did our prices do at that point?
They still kept adjusting up.
Was it significant, though? I mean, we had a lot of inventory back then. So
I would say that it was still pushing up maybe 6, 7%.
Okay.
We didn't see the big adjustments until probably that last episode with COVID.
With COVID, yeah. So fires came in. They obviously had a big impact. We had a huge amount of construction boom here locally, obviously, because of that.
The replacement on insurance money.
Homes.
But we also had that with the roofs that had to be replaced because of the hail damage. There was something like 30,000 roofs.
That's right. We had a storm that.
And so again,
a lot of contractors have been busy the last few years.
And when Reading has always boomed since the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, were all based on construction booms. This was our bad luck became our good luck.
Got the contractors really busy.
And they were able to charge top dollar, which created them spending it in our marketplace.
Yep.
So it was a trickle-down effect.
Yep. So contractors making money is a good thing, and then they start spending money in the economy, which is even a better thing, which ultimately creates its more stimulus here for our local market, right?
Yep.
So how much time are you doing out there, Marcus? Okay. Great. Thanks. So with that, then we're looking at it going, okay, well, contractors are starting to build homes now outside of the car fire issue, where they're building homes now and they're being able to build them for a profit.
Yes.
And so now, would you say that there's a lot of new homes relative to demand right now being built?
No, I think we are underdeveloped for what we need.
I think you're right. I think we are too. I think that we're still probably short on housing. Well, if you look at the absorption rate at just over 2 months, supply of homes for sale.
2.15.
Yep, 2.15. There's just not a ton of inventory. So the builders right now have not oversupplied the market. Would you agree?
Not at all.
Which is a lot different than it was in 2005 and 6.
Well, the difference is the cost and effect and the loans that are available that allowed people to buy things that they probably shouldn't have.
Yep. Yep.
And today it's all still Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae guidelines,
Yep.
which means they have to qualify. They have to have a certain amount down. They have to have a credit report that's 640 or higher.
Yep.
So there were certain things that have to be followed.
Yeah.
So with that, that's probably the biggest problem is our demographic. If we have the average family makes $55,000 a year,
yeah,
still the numbers are older. They're showing $42,000, $44,000 a year.
Yep.
But expectation over the last year, it's gone up.
Yep. So the interest rates then, I mean, when we look at it right now, and if I have to summarize this for our listeners, because I wanted to give them that history lesson of what it is. It's what that market looked like before. But right now, new construction is still way short of what it was in 2005 and 6. We're not sitting on a huge amount of inventory that exceeds demand. Interest rates right now are averaging probably close to 6% just for this podcast. Would you agree that valuation for homes going forward is likely going to be closely tied to the overall inventory relative to demand and what interest rates are doing?
Absolutely.
I mean, those are the two major factors.
One is supply and demand, where we are with it, and the next is affordability.
Yep.
And so being that these homes, these interest rates have increased to a point where in December to today, you're probably spending 30% more on the same product per month. And you add that to the other costs with inflation that we're dealing with. It's pretty rough.
I agree. I mean, I think Warren Buffett talks about it and has said it best over the years, is that interest rates serve to the value of an asset like gravity. So as the rate goes higher, the gravity on the value of an asset gets pulled down more, right? The gravity grows. And then the lower the rate, then less gravity, the more the value of that asset can go up.
Yep.
So right now, would you say that home pricing, because rates are going up, are probably more stable than they were prior to the rates going up?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But because we have that, again, supply and demand issue, as long as that supply stays at this level or maybe even slightly above, we're not going to see any big changes or corrections in price point because there's still a huge need.
Right.
With the rental market being what it is today.
I couldn't believe it. I was talking to a guy yesterday. He's getting married, and him and his wife, or soon-to-be wife, are out shopping for an apartment. $1,000 a month.
Were you getting married? Or
No. A friend of mine.
Okay.
And him and his bride, or soon-to-be bride, they went out shopping for a one-bedroom apartment. $1,000 a month for the one-bedroom apartment.
I'm seeing some numbers that I'm shaking my head at.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing homes in Mary Lake, 1,900 square feet, going for 3,200.
Yeah, that's just crazy to me.
And again, our demographic, what the area can afford is probably 1,800 a month as being our top, and that's now our average, and that was from 3 months ago. So
really, we're short on housing units, period.
Yep.
Right. So if interest rates go up, has an impact on affordability, which definitely puts pressure on value. You have a hard time appreciating when the cost of the purchasing a mortgage goes up, right? Buyer needs more money. But with the housing shortage, what it is, it's still going to be challenging for the values to go down because the demand's too high.
You have to have more product come to the market, and that would push the prices down.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, Michael, thank you very much for taking your time with all of us today. I mean, your value that you bring to a conversation because of your experience is huge. So for all of our listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
If you're enjoying the All Things Real Estate podcast, please feel free to subscribe, rate, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.